Hi everyone, it's Rajna here. Today, we will be going over the anatomical planes of the human body. So, the three main planes that we will be going over today are the frontal, also known as the coronal plane, the sagittal plane, and the axial plane. So, before we even start learning about this topic, let's answer the question why? Why are we learning about this at all? Well, the planes are actually quite important and quite significant in learning about the human body. They're used in the imaging of the human body. They're used to be able to deeply view specific parts of the body, to be able to determine the specific location of a part, and also to be able to distinguish between directions of movements. And so these planes play a crucial role in being able to differentiate between different movements, different parts, different locations of different things within the human body. First off, we have the frontal plane, which is also known as the coronal plane. And so the function of the frontal plane is to divide the body into a front and back. And so an easy tip or an easy way to remember this is that frontal has the word front in it. So it's easier to remember that the frontal plane divides the body into front and back. Now, there's multiple frontal planes that you could draw throughout the human body, but if you wanted to find the exact middle frontal plane, well, middle and frontal, if you combine those two words together, you get mid-frontal plane. So the exact middle would be the mid-frontal plane. So now let's move on to the sagittal plane. So the sagittal plane's function is to divide the body into left and right. And so an easy tip or easy way to remember this is because the word sagittal, just by looking at its structure, you can see that has two T's in it. One T on the left and one T on the right. So that's just an easy or simple way to remember that sagittal plane divides the body into left and right. So, just like with the frontal plane, you could draw multiple sagittal planes throughout the human body, and so the exact middle one would be called the mid-sagittal plane. Now, let's move on to the third plane, the axial plane. And so, what this does is it divides the body into upper and lower. And there's no really easy way to remember this, this is just by memorization. And the exact middle axial plane, because as we saw with the frontal plane and the sagittal plane, there's multiple of those that you can draw throughout the human body. So to find the exact middle, there's a different term used. And so for the axial plane, you could call it the transverse plane, mid-transverse plane, or easiest to remember since it follows the other two, the mid-axial plane. Now, you're going to be quizzed on the content of this video, which is the three planes that we've covered. So the first question is, what plane is this called if it were to be exactly down the middle? Which means it's not one of the many that could be drawn, but it's the one that's in the exact middle. So the answer is the mid-frontal plane, and the reason that we know this is because this plane is called the frontal plane as it divides the body into front and back, and since it is exactly in the middle, it would be called the mid-frontal plane. Okay, question 2. What plane is this? And this plane doesn't exactly have to be in the middle of the human body, but it can be anywhere. So, what do you think this plane would be called? So the answer to this question is the axial plane, because as we've reviewed, planes that divide the body into top and bottom are called axial planes, and then if it was exactly in the middle, this would be called a transverse, mid-transverse, or mid-axial plane. Now, our next question is, what is this plane called if it were to be exactly down the middle, meaning that it divides the body into equal left and right? So the answer for this is the mid-sagittal plane. And so let's break up how we got this. The sagittal plane is the plane that divides the body into equal left and right. And so our easy way to remember this was the two T's, one on the left and one on the right. And this is the mid-sagittal plane because this divides the body into equal two sections. And so our last question is, what plane would this be called if it were to be exactly down the middle? And so the answer to this is the transverse, mid-transverse, or mid-axial plane. And so any plane that divides the body into just upper and lower is called the axial plane. And if it divides it equally, then it would be called the mid-axial plane. Or in this case, there are other names for it, such as transverse or mid-transverse. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope this video helped you understand anatomy just a little bit better. I would like to give a special thanks to Canva.com for helping me create this slideshow. And secondly, I would like to give a very special thanks to my family and friends who have supported me throughout all this. Thank you. See you next time.